The Discovery. In a small, quiet town surrounded by thick trees and rolling hills, there lived an old man named Mr. Johnson. He was a retired teacher who loved to read and take long walks in nature. His house was filled with books, and his garden was a beautiful mix of flowers and plants. But despite his cozy home, Mr. Johnson often felt lonely. His wife had passed away many years ago, and his children had moved to distant cities. One sunny afternoon, Mr. Johnson decided to explore the nearby forest. He liked to breathe in the fresh air and listen to the birds sing. As he walked along the winding path, he noticed the leaves rustling in the bushes. Curious, he stepped closer to investigate. Suddenly, a soft whimper caught his attention. Mr. Johnson knelt down, peering into the thick greenery. To his shock, he saw a small figure huddled among the leaves. It was a child, but not like any child he had ever seen. She had bright green skin, large, sparkling eyes, and tiny, delicate antennae that stuck up from her head. Mr. Johnson's heart raced as he realized this was an alien. The little alien girl looked scared and shivered in the cool breeze. Mr. Johnson felt a rush of compassion. He reached out his hand gently and said, "Hello there, little one. Don't be afraid. I won't hurt you." The girl looked up at him with wide eyes, unsure whether to trust this strange human. With careful movements, Mr. Johnson sat down on the ground beside her. He spoke softly. "My name is Mr. Johnson. What's your name?" The girl hesitated, then whispered, "Zia." "Zia," he repeated, smiling warmly. "That's a beautiful name. What are you doing out here all alone?" Zia's eyes filled with tears. "I was left behind. My ship crashed, and I couldn't find my family." Her voice was barely a whisper, but Mr. Johnson could hear the sadness in her words. Mr. Johnson's heart ached for her. "You don't have to worry. You're safe now. Let's get you something to eat and warm." He stood up and offered his hand. Zia looked at it for a moment, then took it cautiously. Together, they walked back through the forest. As they reached Mr. Johnson's home, Zia gazed in wonder at the little cottage. The warm light from the windows made it look inviting. Mr. Johnson opened the door and gestured for her to come inside. "Welcome to my home." Zia stepped inside, her eyes wide with curiosity. She looked at the books stacked on the shelves and the colorful paintings on the walls. Everything was new and exciting for her. Mr. Johnson smiled, seeing her interest. He led her to the kitchen and prepared a simple meal of soup and bread. As they sat at the table, he asked her questions about her home. "What is your planet like?" he inquired, hoping to learn more about her world. Zia took a deep breath. "My planet is called Trillin. It is beautiful and full of colors. The sky is pink and the trees are blue. We have many animals, and we can fly without ships. But I miss my family so much." Mr. Johnson listened carefully, his heart heavy with understanding. "I can't imagine how you feel, but you're not alone now. We can find a way to help you." After they finished eating, Mr. Johnson showed Zia around the house. He introduced her to his garden, where colorful flowers bloomed. Zia reached out and touched the petals, marveling at their softness. "It's so different here," she said, her eyes sparkling with wonder. Mr. Johnson watched her with a smile. He felt a warmth in his heart, seeing her smile and laugh. She was no longer the scared child hiding in the bushes. She was now a curious little girl exploring a new world. As the sun began to set, painting the sky with shades of orange and purple, Zia suddenly looked worried. "What will happen to me now? Will I ever see my family again?" Mr. Johnson knelt beside her and spoke gently. "We will find a way. First, you need to rest. You've been through a lot today." He led her to a cozy room filled with soft blankets. "You can sleep here tonight. Tomorrow, we will figure everything out." Zia nodded, feeling a little safer. As she lay down, she whispered, "Thank you, Mr. Johnson." He smiled and tucked her in. "Good night, Zia. You are safe here." Mr. Johnson closed the door quietly and returned to the living room. He sat in his favorite chair, deep in thought. He had always enjoyed solitude, but now he felt a new purpose in his life. He wanted to protect this little alien girl and help her find her family. That night, Mr. Johnson couldn't sleep. He stared at the ceiling, thinking about Zia and her home. He wondered how he could help her. As the stars twinkled outside, he made a silent promise to himself. He would do everything in his power to help Zia reunite with her family. Little did he know that this was just the beginning of a beautiful friendship that would change both their lives forever. The bond they would form would be more than just between a man and an alien child. It would become a story of love, hope, and the unbreakable connection between two very different worlds. The search for home. The morning light spilled into the small room where Zia slept. The warm rays gently nudged her awake, and she blinked, trying to adjust to her surroundings. The bed was soft and cozy, and for the first time since she had been abandoned, she felt a sense of comfort. She sat up slowly and looked around, her heart swelling with a mix of hope and sadness. As Zia stepped out of bed, she noticed a small mirror hanging on the wall. She stared at her reflection, the bright green skin and sparkling eyes contrasting with the white walls. "I really am far from home," she whispered to herself. Just then, Mr. Johnson knocked on the door. "Good morning, Zia. How did you sleep?" he asked with a warm smile. Zia opened the door, her cheeks flushing with a mixture of excitement and nervousness. "Good morning, Mr. Johnson. I slept well," she replied, feeling a little shy. "I'm glad to hear that. I made some breakfast. Would you like to join me?" he asked, motioning for her to follow him to the kitchen. The aroma of warm pancakes filled the air, and Zia's eyes widened in delight. "What are those?" she asked, pointing at the golden stacks on the plate. "They're pancakes, a human favorite," Mr. Johnson explained. He poured syrup over them and handed Zia a plate. "Try them. I think you will like them." Zia took a small bite and smiled widely. "These are delicious," she exclaimed. Mr. Johnson chuckled, happy to see her enjoy the meal. As they ate, Zia's mind wandered back to her home on Treeland. She missed her family and her friends. "Mr. Johnson," she began hesitantly, "do you think I will ever get back to my planet?" Mr. Johnson paused, putting down his fork. "I hope so, Zia. We will do everything we can to find a way. But first, we need to learn more about your ship and how it crashed." After breakfast, they decided to explore the area where Zia had been found. Mr. Johnson grabbed a backpack, filled it with some supplies, and led Zia outside. The forest was alive with the sounds of birds and rustling leaves. As they walked, Zia shared more stories about Treeland. "We had a beautiful festival where everyone flew in the sky," she said, her eyes shining with joy. "We danced among the clouds. I hope my family is looking for me." "We will find them, Zia. Let's start by searching for your ship. It might still be nearby," Mr. Johnson said with determination. They ventured deeper into the woods, and Zia guided him to the spot where she remembered her ship had fallen. As they walked, she pointed out the strange, glowing plants and colorful creatures, all new to Mr. Johnson. After a while, they reached a clearing. Zia's eyes grew wide as she pointed to a pile of twisted metal and debris. "That's it. That's my ship," she shouted, running towards it. Mr. Johnson followed closely, observing the wreckage. The ship was small, designed for space travel, but it looked badly damaged. Zia knelt beside it, her expression a mix of sadness and longing. "I wish I could fix it," she said softly. Mr. Johnson looked around, searching for any signs of how the ship had crashed. "Do you remember what happened?" he asked. "I was flying, and there was a storm. The ship lost control, and I ended up here," Zia explained, her voice trembling. Mr. Johnson thought for a moment. "If we can find the right parts, maybe we can fix it," he suggested. "Do you know what we need?" Zia nodded, her eyes lighting up with hope. "Yes, I can help you. There are some things I saw in the forest that might work." With newfound determination, they began to gather materials. They collected sticks, rocks, and anything that seemed useful. Zia led the way, excitedly pointing out the things that could help them repair the ship. As they worked, they shared more stories about their worlds. Mr. Johnson told Zia about his life as a teacher, the children he had inspired, and the lessons he had learned. Zia, in turn, described her vibrant planet, the games they played, and how her family would laugh together. After hours of searching and gathering, they sat down to rest. Mr. Johnson looked at Zia, noticing her energy was fading. "You've done great today. Let's take a break and eat some snacks," he said, pulling out some fruit he had packed. Zia eagerly accepted a piece of fruit, her spirits lifting again. "Thank you, Mr. Johnson," she said, biting into the sweet fruit. "You are very kind." "Kindness goes both ways, Zia. You've brought a lot of joy into my life too," he replied, smiling warmly. As the sun began to set, casting golden light through the trees, they returned to the clearing to inspect the ship once more. Zia was determined to help fix it. "Maybe if we can find someone who knows about ships, they can help us," she suggested, her eyes sparkling with hope. Mr. Johnson thought for a moment. "That's a good idea. But we will need to figure out how to communicate with others. I have some friends who might know something about repairing spacecraft." Zia nodded excitedly, her heart racing with possibilities. "Can we go to them tomorrow?" she asked eagerly. "Absolutely. Tomorrow, we will visit them and see what we can do to help you get back home," Mr. Johnson promised. With their minds set on the adventure ahead, they made their way back to the cottage. Zia felt a renewed sense of hope, knowing that Mr. Johnson was by her side. As they prepared for bed, she whispered, "Thank you for everything. I believe we can find a way home together." Mr. Johnson smiled and replied, "Together, we can do anything." That night, as Zia fell asleep, she dreamed of flying through the pink skies of Trilin, surrounded by her family and friends. And in her dreams, she knew that with Mr. Johnson's help, she would find a way back home. The search for help. The next morning, Zia woke up with excitement bubbling inside her. Today was the day she and Mr. Johnson would seek help to fix her ship. As she got ready, she imagined all the possibilities of reuniting with her family on Trilin. With every passing moment, her hope grew stronger. Mr. Johnson was already in the kitchen, preparing breakfast. The smell of freshly cooked eggs filled the air. "Good morning, Zia," he greeted her with a smile. "I made your favorite, pancakes." Zia's eyes lit up. "Yay, thank you." She quickly joined him at the table. As they ate, she couldn't help but ask, "Who are your friends we will visit today?" Mr. Johnson took a sip of his coffee before answering. "They're a group of mechanics who specialize in fixing all kinds of vehicles. They are very knowledgeable, and I think they can help us figure out how to repair your ship." "Do they know about spaceships?" Zia asked, her curiosity piqued. "Yes, they've worked on some advanced technology before. I'm sure they will be excited to meet you," he replied. After breakfast, they packed their bags with snacks and drinks, then set off on their adventure. The sun was shining brightly, and the forest seemed alive with vibrant colors. Zia walked beside Mr. Johnson, listening to the birds chirping and feeling the soft breeze on her skin. As they approached the village where Mr. Johnson's friends lived, Zia's heart raced. What if they can't help us? She wondered aloud, her excitement tinged with anxiety. Mr. Johnson noticed her worry. "Don't worry, Zia. Even if they can't fix your ship, they might know someone who can. We just have to ask." When they finally arrived at the village, Zia was amazed by what she saw. The houses were made of wood and had colorful flowers blooming everywhere. Children were playing in the streets, laughing and running around. It was different from her home on Trilin, but it felt warm and welcoming. "Over here," Mr. Johnson called as he led her to a small workshop at the edge of the village. The sign above the door read J&K Mechanics. Zia could see various tools and parts scattered around the yard, as well as a few vehicles being repaired. As they entered, the bell above the door jingled, and two men turned around. One had a big beard, and the other was tall and thin. "Hey, Mr. Johnson, who's this?" the bearded man asked, smiling warmly. "This is Zia. She's an alien from a distant planet, and we need help fixing her ship," Mr. Johnson explained. The men exchanged curious glances, their eyes widening with interest. "An alien? That's incredible," the tall man exclaimed. "What happened to your ship?" Zia stepped forward, feeling a mix of nervousness and excitement. "I was flying through a storm, and my ship crashed here. I really want to go home," she said, her voice soft but determined. The two mechanics looked at each other, clearly intrigued. "Show us the ship," the bearded man said eagerly. Zia led them back to the clearing where her ship lay in ruins. The mechanics examined the wreckage carefully, taking notes and discussing among themselves. Zia watched them closely, her heart pounding. "This is quite the craft," the tall mechanic remarked, running his fingers along the metal surface. "We don't see technology like this often." "Do you think you can fix it?" Zia asked, hope shimmering in her eyes. The bearded mechanic scratched his head. "It won't be easy, but I think we can help you. We'll need to gather some parts, and maybe even get a few tools from the village." "Do you have a plan?" Mr. Johnson asked, eager to assist. "First, we need to assess what's salvageable," the tall mechanic replied. "Then we'll list the parts we need. If we can find the right materials, we might be able to get your ship flying again." Zia felt a surge of hope. "What can I do to help?" she asked. "You can help us gather information about your ship's technology. It would help us understand how it works," the bearded mechanic suggested. "Do you remember anything about its systems?" Zia nodded enthusiastically. "Yes, I remember how to operate the controls and the energy sources. I can show you everything I know." The mechanics exchanged impressed glances. "All right, let's get to work," the tall mechanic declared, clapping his hands together. The rest of the day was filled with excitement and hard work. Zia shared her knowledge about her ship, explaining the various systems and how they operated. The mechanics listened carefully, jotting down notes and asking questions. As the sun began to set, Zia felt a sense of accomplishment. She was helping to rebuild her connection to her home. The mechanics had also shown her the tools and techniques they used, making her feel more involved in the process. After a long day, the group gathered around a small fire outside the workshop. The atmosphere was warm, and they shared stories while enjoying snacks. Zia felt happy to be surrounded by new friends. "Thank you for believing in me," Zia said to Mr. Johnson, her voice full of gratitude. "I couldn't do this without your help." Mr. Johnson smiled warmly. "You're strong and brave, Zia. I'm proud to help you." The bearded mechanic raised his cup. "Here's to new friendships and adventures. We'll get that ship flying again." They all cheered, raising their cups and celebrating their newfound camaraderie. Zia looked up at the stars twinkling above, feeling a warmth in her heart. She was no longer alone. She had found friends who believed in her and were willing to help her. As Zia settled into her sleeping bag that night, she closed her eyes, feeling grateful for the day's events. Tomorrow would bring new challenges, but she was ready. With Mr. Johnson and her new friends by her side, she knew that anything was possible. And deep down, she believed that one day she would return home to Treylan. You said, the challenges ahead. The sun rose the next morning, painting the sky with shades of orange and pink. Zia woke up feeling excited yet anxious. Today was a crucial day in their quest to repair her ship. She could sense the importance of what lay ahead, and she was determined to help in every way possible. After a quick breakfast with Mr. Johnson and the mechanics, Zia gathered her thoughts. She felt a mix of nerves and hope. What if we can't fix the ship? She thought. But she quickly shook off the doubt. She had to believe in their teamwork. As they gathered around the ship, the bearded mechanic, named Jake, laid out the plan. We need to gather some parts from the village. We will also look for any scrap metal that can help us reinforce the structure of your ship, Zia. Where should we start? Zia asked, eager to contribute. The tall mechanic, who introduced himself as Leo, pointed towards a nearby store. Let's head to Old Man Grayson's shop first. He has a lot of useful materials, and he might have what we need. The group set off, and Zia walked beside Mr. Johnson, who offered her encouraging words. You're doing great, Zia. Remember, every step counts. When they reached Old Man Grayson's shop, Zia was amazed by the variety of items inside. The walls were lined with tools, spare parts, and all sorts of gadgets. Old Man Grayson himself was a tall, gray-haired man with a warm smile. Ah, Mr. Johnson, it's good to see you. What brings you here today? We need some parts for Zia's ship, Mr. Johnson explained. Do you have any spare materials that could help us? The unexpected visitor. The next day began with a fresh promise. The sun shone brightly, casting a warm glow over the workshop where Zia and her team were working. They had made significant progress on the ship, and Zia felt a surge of excitement as she approached the craft. It looked a bit battered but was starting to take shape. The mechanics worked with enthusiasm, fueled by their shared goal. As Zia climbed into the cockpit, she felt a mix of nostalgia and determination. Memories of her home on Trilon flooded back, reminding her of her parents and the life she had left behind. I'll get back to you, she whispered to herself, gripping the controls. The ship felt like a part of her, and she knew she had to do everything possible to bring it back to life. While they worked, Zia noticed a shadow pass by the open workshop door. Curious, she stepped out to see what it was. To her surprise, a small group of locals had gathered outside, watching the repairs with interest. They were children, their eyes wide with wonder as they pointed at the alien ship. Wow! Look at that! One of the boys exclaimed. He had messy brown hair and wore a bright red shirt. It's an alien ship. Zia smiled at the children. Yes, it is. I'm Zia. What are your names? I'm Ben, the boy replied, bouncing on his toes. And this is Mia and Sarah. The two girls waved, their faces beaming with excitement. What are you doing here? Maya asked, her eyes sparkling with curiosity. We're fixing my ship so I can go back home, Zia explained. It was damaged when I landed on this planet. The children gasped in awe. You're from another planet? Sarah asked, her voice filled with wonder. Yes, I'm from a planet called Trilon, Zia said, feeling a sense of pride. It's a beautiful place with blue skies and green hills. The children exchanged excited glances. Can you take us with you? Ben asked eagerly. Zia chuckled softly. I wish I could, but my ship needs a lot of work before it can fly again. Right now, I need to focus on that. Just then, Mr. Johnson walked over, a smile on his face. What's going on here? He asked, glancing at the children. Zia was just telling us about her home. Mia exclaimed, her enthusiasm contagious. Mr. Johnson knelt down to their level. Well, how about you all help Zia with the repairs? She could use an extra pair of hands. The children's eyes widened with excitement. Really? Can we? Ben asked, bouncing in place. Zia looked at Mr. Johnson, unsure if it was a good idea. But they're just kids, she said. I don't want them to get hurt. Don't worry, Zia, Mr. Johnson reassured her. They can help with simple tasks. It'll be fun, and it might even inspire them. Zia considered this. She could use the help, and seeing the children's eager faces made her heart warm. All right, but you have to listen carefully and stay safe. Okay, she said, looking at the children. They all nodded enthusiastically. We promise, they said in unison. The children quickly set to work, helping Zia and the mechanics with small tasks. Zia showed them how to pass tools and hold parts in place. Their laughter filled the air, making the workshop feel more alive. As they worked, Zia shared stories of her adventures on Trilon and the incredible creatures she had seen. The children listened intently, hanging on her every word. "And once, I even rode a giant sky whale," Zia exclaimed, her eyes sparkling with excitement. "Wow! What's a sky whale?" Sarah asked, wide-eyed. "They are huge, gentle creatures that glide through the skies, just like birds," Zia explained. "They can soar high above the clouds and dive into the oceans." The children were mesmerized, and their imaginations soared as Zia described the beautiful colors of the whales and how they sang haunting melodies. For a moment, Zia forgot about her worries and embraced the joy of sharing her story. As the day wore on, Zia felt grateful for the help. The children worked diligently, learning and laughing along the way. They even surprised the mechanics with their enthusiasm, proving that no task was too small. But just as they were starting to feel accomplished, a low rumble echoed in the distance. The children froze, looking up with wide eyes. Zia turned to Mr. Johnson, who was already frowning. "That doesn't sound good," he said, squinting towards the horizon. Before anyone could react, a dark shape appeared in the sky, growing larger as it approached. The excitement quickly turned to confusion and fear. "What is that?" Mia whispered, clutching Ben's arm. Zia's heart raced. She had never seen anything like it. The object was moving fast, and it looked menacing. "Everyone, get inside," she shouted, her instincts kicking in. The children scrambled into the workshop, and Zia followed, her heart pounding. They huddled together as the dark object descended, casting a shadow over the workshop. Mr. Johnson rushed to the door, peeking outside. "It's a ship," he said, his voice tense. "But it's not like yours, Zia. It looks threatening." Zia's mind raced. Could it be an enemy ship, or was it just a coincidence? She felt a knot in her stomach, realizing this could change everything. As the ship landed nearby, a heavy silence fell over the group. Zia exchanged worried glances with Mr. Johnson, knowing that whatever happened next could alter their fate. Suddenly, the hatch of the ship opened and a figure emerged. Tall and imposing, it looked like a soldier clad in dark armor, with a helmet that obscured its face. The children gasped, their eyes wide with fear. Zia took a deep breath, her heart pounding in her chest. She had faced many challenges, but this was something entirely different. She could feel the tension in the air as they prepared to confront the unexpected visitor. What did they want? Would they be friendly or hostile? "Stay close," Zia whispered to the children, her protective instincts kicking in. She felt a surge of determination. No matter what happened, she would stand strong for her new friends and protect them. Together, they would face whatever came next. The confrontation. The imposing figure stepped forward, its heavy boots thudding against the ground. Zia could see the outline of its armor glinting in the sunlight, making it look even more intimidating. The children huddled behind her, their eyes wide with fear. Zia felt a surge of protectiveness, and her heart raced as she prepared to confront the unexpected visitor. "Stay behind me," she whispered to the kids, who nodded silently, clinging to each other. Zia stepped out to meet the armored figure, her determination solid. She had faced many challenges before, but this was different. As she approached, the figure raised its hand, and a mechanical voice came from its helmet. "Identify yourself," it commanded, the voice echoing with authority. "I am Zia, a traveler from Trelin." "I mean no harm," she replied, trying to keep her voice steady. "Who are you, and why are you here?" The figure paused for a moment, and Zia could feel the weight of its gaze through the visor. "I am Commander Rax of the Dragon Empire. We have come in search of a ship that crashed on our territory. Is this the vessel?" Zia's heart sank. The Dragon Empire was known for being ruthless, and she had heard many stories of their conquests. "Yes, this is my ship," she said cautiously, "but I am repairing it to leave this planet. I have no intention of causing trouble. Your ship has been marked for retrieval." Commander Rax replied, his tone cold. "You will come with us." Panic surged through Zia. She thought of the children behind her, frightened and vulnerable. "Wait," she said, raising her hands in a gesture of peace. "I didn't mean to intrude. I just want to go home. Can't we talk about this?" "Your words mean nothing," Rex said, his voice steady and unwavering. "The Dragon Empire does not negotiate with uninvited guests. You must come with me." The tension in the air thickened as Zia searched for a way out. She had to protect the children. That was her top priority. "Please, you can't take me. I'm not a threat to your empire," she pleaded. "I only want to fix my ship and leave. There's no need for violence." Rex remained unmoved, his posture rigid. "You do not understand. The Dragon Empire does not allow such actions. Your ship poses a risk, and we will not allow you to escape." Zia felt a surge of desperation. She had to think fast. "What if I helped you instead?" she proposed, her mind racing. "I could work for you, show you how to repair the ship. I know the technology better than anyone." The commander hesitated, and Zia seized the moment. "I can be useful. You could use my skills for the benefit of the Empire. I could help you with advanced technology, even from my home planet." "Why would you help us?" Rax asked, suspicion creeping into his voice. "What is your true motive?" "I just want to go home," Zia said sincerely. "If I help you, maybe you will let me leave in peace." Commander Rax considered her words, and for a moment, Zia thought she might have reached him. But then he stepped back, his expression still unreadable. "You will come with us. If you prove your usefulness, I may consider your release. But until then, you are a prisoner." Zia's heart sank, but she knew she had to protect the children at all costs. "No, you can't take me," she shouted, feeling the surge of panic. "What about them?" She pointed to the children, who were watching in fear. Rex turned to look at the kids, his expression softening for just a moment. "They will not be harmed, but they cannot stay here. You must choose. Go with me willingly, or I will take you by force." Zia felt the weight of the decision crushing her. She couldn't let Rax take her without a fight, but if she resisted, the children might be caught in the crossfire. "Okay," she said, her voice trembling. "I'll go with you, but only if you promise to leave them alone." Rax nodded slowly. "Very well. But know this, the Dragon Empire does not tolerate betrayal. If you attempt to escape, the consequences will be dire." Zia swallowed hard, her heart racing. She knew this was a dangerous game, but she had to protect the children. "I understand," she replied, trying to sound brave. Rax signaled to the soldiers behind him, and they moved closer, ready to escort her away. "You will come with us now. The ship will be monitored closely." Zia took a deep breath, glancing back at the children. "Stay safe," she whispered to them, her heart aching at the thought of leaving them behind. "I'll be back." As she was led away, Zia felt a mix of fear and determination. She had to find a way to escape this situation and return to the children. The Dragon Empire may have taken her captive, but she would not give up easily. Deep down, she knew she had the strength to fight back and protect those she had come to care for. The soldiers marched her towards the Dragon ship, its dark silhouette looming in the distance. Zia steeled herself for what lay ahead. She would find a way to outsmart them and return to her friends. There was no other option. The adventure was far from over, and Zia was ready to face whatever challenges awaited her in the depths of the Dragon Empire.